Okay. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Forget about StreamYards for tonight. It's having issues. Hopefully, here on Discord, we won't have any issues.
And if we do, then it's going to be a short stream.
Yep. Because I'm just not going to tolerate it. Plain and simple.
Don't blame you.
But anyways, tonight we're here once again to continue our conversation on the Back to the Future trilogy. And we were talking about Back to the Future Part 2. I had pulled up the scene where Marty was trying on the Power Lace shoes for the first time, and he also tried on the jacket, told Doc it didn't fit. But, with Back to the Future Part 2, its main issues that we've already discussed is the fact that you were filming two movies at the same time, relatively speaking, and it shows. It definitely shows.
Yep.
That out.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't know why I said 4. 2 is still very, very memorable still.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it as good? No. But is it still memorable? Does it still kind of embody that same adventure and sci-fi feeling that we got in 1 and 3? Absolutely. You still get the same feel. The execution might have been off, but the movie itself, it's not a bad movie. It's just the least liked of the 3. It's the most ambitious, but also the least liked. So, take that for what you will.
Yeah. It was an idea that looked good on paper. Unfortunately, the execution of said idea wasn't what you had hoped for. I mean, even the fact that, old Biff somehow figures out that you need to get the DeLorean up to 88 miles per hour in order to travel back through time. And this is me nitpicking. The fact that he's able to figure it out that the time circuits are, what makes it possible by turning them on and, inputting this, a specific date. Now, I know I've heard in different interviews where Robert Zemeckis has said it, Bob Gale has said it, that their original idea was to actually have Doc and Marty go back to the 60s instead of going back to 1955. So you would have...
That's interesting.
Yeah. You would have seen George and Lorraine in the height of, the 60s flower child movement, and, it would have been an interesting interaction between all of them. Here it is.
True, yeah.
Calvin Klein, disappears in 1955. Then he returns and say 1968, right in the middle of Woodstock, perhaps, because that was one of their ideas. But it was real ambitious of them to actually go back to the first movie and then take a look at it from a different perspective. And, let's go ahead and talk about the fact that, well, in 2015, Marty and Doc are going after the cops because they're taking Jennifer of 1985 back to Hilldale because they think she's the Jennifer of the future.
Because it's all about thumbprints. Like, your thumbprint is kind of like how everything's done. Your identification, your keys, everything, your thumbprint. Because nobody would ever find a way to ever try and duplicate your thumbprint. ever.
Oh no, not at all.
So,
Not at all. Wink, wink, nudge.
laughed at that.
And
I'm
all
like,
that.
we can do that right now. We can duplicate people's thumbprints if we got the right materials.
Mm-hmm. Very true. And yet in this movie, it's like, okay, place your thumb against the plate. You have access to, your house. You can pay your bills because, there is a scene while Marty's in Hill Valley where that sports news pops up and Terry comes by, and Terry was actually a mechanic back in 1955, and he's played by the voice of Roger Rabbit. And, there's a particular scene where the writers were very close on one aspect.
You there?
I'm still here, brother. I'm still here. The meter's going. I'll double check the sound on the YouTube end. Make sure that, I can hear everything. So let me turn that on. I'm still here. The meter's going. I'll double check the sound on the YouTube end. Yeah. Sound's still coming through. Yep, exactly. Black Dragon National Treasure. Go ahead and clear that. But anyways, there's a sports news section in part 2 where it says Cubs win World Series, beat Miami. They were off 1 year, and the team, Miami, the Marlins, not the Gators, but then, it was probably just one of those things. And Bob Gale has even said this, where they're thinking, what would be the funniest thing to hear in Back to the Future about a team winning the World Series? Well, why not the Cubs? Because Bob Gale grew up a St. Louis Cardinals fan and thought that'd be humorous. But to Cup fans in 2015, the actual 2015, we're thinking, was Back to the Future right? Well, unfortunately, the Cubs ended up getting swept by the Mets in 4 games in the National League Championship Series. But close enough. So, Jennifer gets dropped off at her house in Hilldale in 2015. She comes to, and she ends up finding out.
You there, buddy?
I'm still here. I'm still here. I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear. Unless it's the Discord end, and that's why you can't hear me. Let's see. Okay. All right. Why does Discord do this? Once. All right, you should be hearing me loud and clear on the Discord end. Welcome back, Spock. So I'm going to wait for Patreon to respond. But anyways, Back to the Future Part 2, I was just discussing how Jennifer wakes up in her house in Hilldale back in 2015. And I am going to just do one more check because this is getting aggravating. Wait for Patreon to respond. But anyways, Back to the Future Part 2. Okay, so the sound is coming
Hey,
through.
can you hear me?
You were muted,
Hello?
brother. You were muted. All right. I will wait for him to come back.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you just fine. It's Discord.
Okay, I actually cannot hear you through Discord. I have to have the stream up to even hear you.
Well, I've already gone through the settings on my end again. And I'll do it again. Yeah, everything's going through like it should. Test, test, test. Come on. Test, 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 test. All right, all right. It's Discord. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. It's Discord. I'm trying to keep myself from saying a few colorful metaphors.
Well, because one minute you're talking, next minute you go silent. And I'm like, hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Rub it in, Spock. Rub it in. Yeah, dude. I've already checked my output settings. It's Discord. It keeps changing it. It won't leave well enough alone. Every time lately, it won't leave well enough alone.
Yeah, Discord's not exactly the friendliest right now.
No, and neither is Streamlabs. But anyways, as long as folks can still hear me, and yes, I am looking at the Discord to make sure that there's a green little square around my profile picture.
Don't look at me, okay? I'm the victim, just like you.
I'm waiting for somebody in the chat to say, Mike, tell me exactly where Discord hurt you and Streamlabs hurt you.
I'd say I would ask that question a different way, but I'll just keep my mouth shut.
Spock, brother, I have had multiple times where Discord will change my settings each and every time it updates. I have not plugged anything else in. Everything else has been left alone. Yeah, that is the bright side, brother. At least the audio is crisp. At least I got something working for me.
Yeah, that's true too.
So, anyways, Biff Tannen messes with Discord, he messes with StreamYards, and basically, to get back on track, Marty and Doc are able to recover Jennifer after Jennifer runs into herself, and that's after Marty is suckered into a bet with needles, and Marty loses his job, and this is future Marty. So then Doc and Marty and Jennifer, along with Einstein, I forgot to mention Einstein, who was in a kennel, and he was basically in hibernation, not very long, but anyways, Marty, Doc, Jennifer, and Einstein go back to 1985, but it's not their 1985.
Was it? Hold on a second. Was it because he lost a bet? I thought it was because he did an illegal. He did something illegal.
What if the Gyps is monitoring? The Gyps will never find out. Stick your card.
Yeah, because it was something to do with like taxes or something, and then he says, "What about And what if he's like it's illegal? I mean, what if the Gist is listening?" And he's like, "The Gist will never know."
stick your card in the receiver, and this will solve all your financial problems.
Yeah, so it was either a scam or it was like a tax thing. We don't know.
It was definitely a scam, and Needles was the kind of character to do it. You know, he was Marty's bully, just like Biff was George's bully.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yep. And Jennifer gets a copy of the fax saying, "You're fired." Because the Jits was monitoring. He says, "McFly, I was monitoring that scam you just interfaced. You are terminated." Terminating? No, sir. It was Needles. Needles set the whole thing up. I was just trying to get him trapped.
It was a sting operation. I was trying to set him up, and he's trying to talk his way out of it.
Mm-hmm. Although, one thing about that scene in the future McFly home was hydrated pizza. What was your thought when you first saw hydrated pizza from Pizza Hut? Nonetheless.
Well, I mean, A, product placement, and B, every time I see that. Okay. Do you want to know how good that product placement is? And I shit you not, this has happened literally every time. Every time that scene comes up, within less than 10 minutes, I have ordered a pizza. Not Pizza Hut, just a pizza. Every time.
Yeah, you know, that's.
I can't. Well, A, I love pizza. And B, for some reason, it's like okay. So
that's what they want you to do. That's the message they're sending to you. Order this Pizza Hut pizza, or pizza in general, or Pepsi.
The Pepsi, no, but the pizza, yes. But you know what? It's the same. But I'm like this with food. There's an episode of How I Met Your Mother where Marshall's trying to find this one burger place, this hole-in-the-wall burger place, when he first moved to New York, and he's been trying to find it for like 7 years, and he can't find it. Well, he finally finds it. Whenever I watch that episode, at the end of it, I always have to go to a burger place. I don't care if it's a gourmet or McDonald's, and I have to get me some burgers. It's me and food. Me and food are just intertwined like that,
Subliminal messaging.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Yeah.
You will buy this product. You will like this show.
It's not like that with everything. I mean, I'm not that stupid. I just always happen to be hungry when those things come on at the same time.
Well, see, that's the big issue. It's like I was always told growing up, don't ever shop for groceries when you're hungry. Why? Because you'll end up buying stuff you won't actually eat, or you'll end up buying stuff you shouldn't be eating too much of. But anyways, getting back on track with Back to the Future Part 2, Marty and Doc, Jennifer and Einstein return to 1985. They realize they're back in 1985 with a jet flying over. They drop Jennifer off at her house. They leave her on the porch swing, and Doc says, the shock could knock her out for a few hours or a few days, but when you come back, bring some smelling salt. And Marty goes, "You're the Doc." So then Doc brings Marty back to his house, drops him off, and he says, "If you need me, I'll be back in my lab dismantling this thing." So Marty goes to go into his house, goes to open the side gate, and the side gate is locked. So he hops over the fence, goes into his room, although there's someone in his room. As a matter of fact, it's no longer the McFly house. It belongs to another family. And yeah. I mean, oh boy.
Yeah, I mean, Dad comes at him with a baseball bat, I mean, just shit goes down quick.
"I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong house." "You bet your ass you're in the wrong house."
Get him, Dad, get him!
Get him, kill him!
And then he's like running, and then he ends up finding the house with the with a newspaper, and whose house does it happen to be?
So you're the son of a bitch that's been stealing my newspapers. Mr.
Strickland.
Don't you recognize me, sir? It's Marty. Who? Marty McFly, sir, from school, sir. Don't you remember me? The school burned down 6 years ago, but you look to me like you're a slacker. Yes, sir, I am a slacker. And then, there's a drive-by, and, hey, Strickland!
What did he say? Like, you got, what was it, 10 seconds to tell me to get out of here with your nuts intact.
Yep. But James Tolkien, I mean, he delivered it perfectly.
Oh, he does. I mean, he was made for Strickland. I mean, he was just made for Strickland, I mean,
he was made for any strict, hard-ass, uptight sort of authority figure, because that's who he played. Is a lot of authority figures. And hello to you, Alan Copeland. Good to see you, brother. So, anyways, Strickland goes chasing after the guys who committed the drive-by, and then Marty finds himself walking into Hill Valley proper, and there's David Lee Roth music playing in the background. I Can't Drive 55. And yeah, there's a lot of changes. A lot of changes to 1985 Hill Valley. Biff's Pleasure Palace instead of the courthouse clock tower, for one. Biker gangs. Just crime in general. I mean, even when Marty was walking to Strickland's house, do you see the chalk outline of 2 deceased bodies that were there because of crimes that were committed?
Yeah. I mean, and that's and that's the thing, is that you really get to see just kind of the, I guess you could call it the hellhole that it's become, really. So, I mean, it's and that's the thing, I think, with when we see Marty in when he's walking through and he's like what the hell happened here? I think it's meant to invoke a certain emotional reaction, because this is Marty's home. His home isn't what he left here maybe 12 hours ago, and it didn't look like this. But because of if anything, you could say that the consequences of your actions, he had to have the almanac. And because he didn't destroy the almanac properly, he just threw it away. There were certain consequences to his actions, and there's big time, like you could say moral or philosophical consequences and everything. But I mean, talk about a mind F that he's probably going through at this time.
Yep. I mean, there's a deleted scene where he encounters Dave, and he's thinking, what the hell happened here? He even asked Dave, and Dave's so drunk and incoherent that Marty pretty much has to go search for his answers elsewhere, which he does when he gets to the steps of the Tannen Pleasure Palace, and you get that history museum about Biff Tannen, how he married Marty's mom Lorraine back in 1973. You see Biff's car. You first find out about Buford Mad Dog Tannen, and as Marty is staring at the TV, finding out that Biff married his mom, who do you see but Biff's 3 goons? And I still remember it, when they knock him out, you hear, one of them after they say to Marty, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. And then they conk him over the head with the end of the barrel of a gun. And you hear them go, the easy way. So that then it leads to our next scene. Well, Marty's waking up. We're getting, basically a reoccurrence of what happened in the first movie. Mom, is that you? And, Lorraine says that they're there now. You've been asleep for almost, I forget how many hours, but it was several hours. And then she says you're safe on the 57th floor or something like that. And Marty wakes up and goes, 57th floor? And then the light comes on. Lorraine turns to Marty and Marty goes, Mom, you're so big.
Because the Preston plan.
Yep.
God. So this is one thing that never made sense to me, is that why, like, you get it that, okay, Biff has her, but why does Biff even keep her around? Because it's obvious he probably doesn't need, they probably don't even sleep in the same bedroom together. He's banging other chicks left and right, and she knows it, obviously, but because it's an abusive relationship, it's like, why does Biff even keep her around? Like, I guess that was one thing that never made any sense to me. It's like, okay, why do you keep her around?
And, it doesn't make sense because, even later on in the movie, after, Marty has his first encounter with Biff and ends up leaving Biff's pleasure palace to go to the cemetery after finding out that his dad died back in 1973, and says, no, this can't be true. This is impossible. Doc comes and says, I'm afraid it is true, of Marty, all of it. And we get a little bit more of a backstory of how George was killed in 1973, March 15th, 1973, for anybody who's curious out there. And then that's when things start to connect. Old Biff's cane from the future found in the DeLorean. And Marty and Doc have to come up with a plan on how to restore the timeline back to their 1985. So then Marty goes back to the Pleasure Palace, and who do we see with Biff when Marty shows up again? These two girls. So obviously, he doesn't need Lorraine. Lorraine might need Biff more than Biff needs her, obviously.
Right. Yeah, and that's, that's just something that never made any sense to me. It's like, okay, yeah, she needs you. We, the audience knows this. But the thing is, what is she going to do about it? You could kick her out to the curb, and what is she going to do? Because remember, he says that Biff tells Marty, literally just a few minutes later, we find out that he's like, kid, I own them. He's like, he's like, what about the cops, Biff? They're going to match the bullet with that gun. He's like, kid, I own the police. And even if they did, they couldn't they couldn't match the bullet that killed your old man.
You son of a click.
Yeah. Although it is a pretty great moment when he's like, he's in Biff's office and he's like, Biff, what the hell is that? And then he grabs like the little like match tray thing where it kind of gets like started, and just hurls it at him and almost decapitates him.
I'm gonna get you, you son of a. And then, of course, that rooftop scene when Marty jumps off and Biff goes, butthead. And then all of a sudden, Marty starts rising up and you see the DeLorean as Biff is looking over, and Biff is going, "What the hell?" Doc opens up the gullwing doors. And
and again, the music in this trilogy. I mean, because in that scene when he's like, Doc, you're not gonna believe it. We got to go back to 1955. And then Doc's like, unbelievable. And then you hear the music going as they're flying. You're just like, oh, something's. Oh, we're getting down to it now. It's just like again, for those who have never seen this, if you were to watch this movie on mute, or if you would just take the music out of the scenes, the movie's pretty bland. It's the score and where they put it in at these key moments, you know? I get shivers just thinking about it again.
Yeah, and even Doc, when he finds out that they're going back to 1955, he goes, unbelievable that old Biff could have chose that exact date. It either means that particular point in time is very significant to the time continuum, or it's just an odd coincidence.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Marty asks the question, well, we're not going to go back now. And Doc's all, yes, we are. But what about Jennifer? What about Einstein? Don't worry. Assuming that we succeed in our mission and we're able to restore 1985, then everything around Jennifer and Einstein will change instantaneously. So,
won't remember a thing.
Go ahead.
No, and I said, and no, and he's like, they won't remember a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, this all just be one bad dream, basically.
Yep. So, they get to 1955, they land the DeLorean, and of course I remember, Doc and Marty getting out of the DeLorean, and Marty's all, man, it's just like I was here yesterday. You were, Marty, you were. Amazing, isn't it? And also what I found funny when, Doc's going over what needs to be done and that Marty needs to, dress in something inconspicuous, is the fact that Doc has his briefcase with all sorts of bills from all different decades.
I know, right? I mean, it's like, I remember as a kid seeing that and I'm thinking, oh, money. But then obviously in your head, not all those bills would be accepted at certain points, especially the older bills. So I'm thinking, I wonder how much he has if he approached, say, a collector and said, I have these crisp, pristine bills from the year 1870. How much would you give me for these bills? He's like, oh my God, these. I mean, again, you just wonder how much Doc has. Plus, I'm just going to throw this. Remember, he threw his entire fortune into the DeLorean. Yep. Where did he get all that money?
I mean, the one clue that we're given in Back to the Future Part 1 is that he, sold the grounds that the house itself was on to developers. So all that money that he got from the sale.
Right. But remember, he has bills dating back to like the late 1800s, I think, even.
Who's to say that while in 2015 he didn't make other trips through time? Because remember, he mentioned when they go to 2015 that he went forward in time to see what else happens after Martin McFly Jr. is caught and tried for robbing the Hill Valley Mall.
Right. No. Well, okay, let me rephrase what I'm saying then. If he went back in time to like the late 1800s, okay, what did he use to get said currency with? Did you get what I'm saying? Is that like, did he have a bar of gold and that's how he got the currency? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Unless he robbed a bank.
He could have.
I mean, honestly, that would make Back to the Future far more interesting if all of a sudden, like, you find out there's a warrant form in 2015 and it's all the way back from 1885. That would be funny. I think that'd be funny, personally. But
And, you know, it could very well be one of those things where we, as an audience member, we're not supposed to be thinking about it that hard. It's just supposed to be a gag in the movie, and it's supposed.
Yeah, no. I think that's I think that's a very fair point. Very fair point to make.
And, you know, the thing about it is that Doc tells Marty to get something inconspicuous, and what does Marty do? He comes out looking like a Blues Brother.
Oh my god! I remember the first time I saw that, I'm thinking, "That's what you picked." And remember, I had not seen Blues Brothers at this time, so I'm thinking, "You look like one of those guys that from Greece." I mean, you look like, you look like you should be standing right next to freaking, Olivia Newton-John and freaking
John Travolta.
John Travolta. Thank you. Like, you should be standing there right next to them. You know, I mean, yep.
Yep, and, you know, Marty's looking through binoculars. You know, of course, Doc handed him a walkie-talkie. How those walkie-talkies from the 1980s even had that kind of range, I can tell you right now, they didn't. They didn't have that kind of range.
They didn't, because I could tell you right now is that I used to use radios at a previous job, and there was a gas station that had a pizzeria that had a pretty damn good pizzeria actually in it, and it was not even a mile away. It was maybe 3/4 of a mile tops. These radios supposedly had a range of 5 miles on them. When you went to that gas station, you couldn't hear anybody if you tried to radio them.
Yep. I mean,
we weren't exactly in the big city either. Like, there was clear line of sight, and you still couldn't hear anything. You still couldn't hear them. So yeah.
I mean, you know, growing up in the 80s, kids like myself, we had walkie-talkies, and, you know, you get out of range. It didn't even have to be that far. You could barely hear what your friend was even telling you.
Yep.
And
that's fair.
Alan, I'm looking at the video right now. I mean, there's nothing I can really do about the video quality, because Streamlabs OBS is telling me that everything's good. It could be a server issue.
I mean, we've been having I mean, honestly, right now, it's a miracle that we're even doing that we're doing as well as we are right now.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
So, anyways, Marty ends up following Biff after he sees Biff coming out of the house, and you hear Biff's grandmother going, Biff, where are you going now? I'm going to get my car, Grandma. And then, of course, you know, the neighborhood kids come up to Biff, and Biff takes their ball, throws it up to the patio of another house, and, you know, Biff is just being Biff.
Yeah, that's about all you need to say. Biff's being Biff.
Yep. So Biff, you know, gets to his car, and who do you see as young Biff is talking to Terry, the mechanic? The same Terry that we meet in 2015. We see old Biff. And what does old Biff remember? The manure.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, like, no, sorry. I like my brain had a question mark. Like, what? Yeah, because he's like the manure. He's like, huh, I remember this.
Because Terry's trying to explain the young Biff, you know, it's $300 damage because there was horse manure in his vehicle.
Yeah.
See, Black Dragon, they've been having trouble since the start. They had to restart the stream once. Very true. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
gonna say it right now. I haven't had any internet issues all day, and it's become par for the course when I use certain services, and it has nothing to do with the day. It's just the chance I take when I use certain services.
Yeah, that's true.
But anyways, Biff's arguing with Terry. They go inside the auto body repair shop. They come back out. Biff's carrying some oil. Marty's in the back seat. Biff's throwing, oil cans into the back seat. They're landing on Marty. Marty's trying his darndest not to say anything. And then the next thing we see is old Biff is in the driver's seat. And young Biff says, "Get the hell out of my car, old man." And, then, old Biff says, "How would you like to be rich?" "Oh, that's rich." And, there's an exchange between old Biff and young Biff. And eventually, old Biff takes young Biff back to Biff's grandmother's house. And that's where old Biff starts telling young Biff about the sports almanac. And how, with that book, he can never lose. He can be rich beyond his dreams. And one of the things they're listening to is a college football game. And the announcer says, "Oh, it looks like it's all over for UCLA." And old Biff says to young Biff, "How much you want to bet that UCLA wins?" "Oh, you just heard him. They lost." So they listen to the announcer, and UCLA comes back, wins the game. And young Biff says, "How do you know that?" And then old Biff says, "I told you, it's all in this book." So they get out of the car. They close the garage doors. They're talking. And one of the things that old Biff says to young Biff, which the alternate Biff of 1985 says to Marty, is that, "Oh, and one day a kid or a crazy wild-eyed man who claims to be a scientist will come asking about that book." And as Biff of 1985, the alternate version says, "And if they do, kill him."
Mm-hmm.
And what's also funny about that scene between old Biff and young Biff is, young Biff is nonchalant about the book, ready to, discard it. And old Biff says, "Don't do that, you idiot. Don't you have a safe?" "No, you don't have a safe. In the meantime, put it in your back pocket like this." And he folds up the almanac and puts it in his younger self's back pocket. And then
I love this reaction because it's like if some dude were just grabbing your rear. It's kind of like the same reaction. Like, "Dude, what the hell are you doing, man?" It's like he has like quite literally the exact same reaction.
Yeah.
As if like another guy just like came up and just grabbed your rear. And you didn't like know that they were going to do that. Yeah, I laugh at that every time, personally.
Yeah, it was perfect, absolutely perfect. So Marty's trapped in the garage. He tells Doc that he's trapped in the garage, and Doc says, "Well, I'm going to have to wait till nightfall to come get you." So in the meantime, Biff leaves for the Enchantment Under the Sea dance with Marty in the back seat. Doc buys a disguise and a bicycle, gets to the house because Marty told him the address. And of course, Marty's not there, and Doc's going, "Damn, where's that kid?" Just like he said in part 1.
Mm-hmm.
So as Biff's driving to the high school and getting to the River Road Tunnel, Doc gets on the walkie. I mean, not Doc, but Marty gets on the walkie and says, Doc. And then Doc says, "I just went to Biff's house and you weren't there. I'm in the back seat. We're on our way to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance." And of course, then that's when you get the, major paradox talk, because Marty can't run into his younger self. And by younger self, I mean the Marty from yesterday, who needs to get back to 1985. Otherwise, there's a major paradox. So, get to the school. Biff meets up with his goons, and Marty is trying to stay incognito and trying to get his hands on the sports almanac. At one point, he thinks he's going to have the sports almanac when Biff is talking to his goons, and the goons go off, and Principal Strickland, I called him Skinner. Now listen, Bart. And welcome back. Welcome back, Christian Fandom Geek. But anyways, Biff tries to tell Mr. Strickland that he doesn't drink when Mr. Strickland smells alcohol on his breath, and Mr. Strickland ends up taking the sports almanac, although is it the sports almanac? So,
an unusual reading for someone your age.
Mm-hmm. Sports statistics. Interesting subject. Homework, Tannen? No, Mr. Strickland, because I ain't at home. You've got a real attitude, mister. You're a slacker. But, Marty strikes out getting the sports almanac, follows Mr. Strickland into his office, hides under Mr. Strickland's desk while Mr. Strickland is having a shot of whiskey. You would too if you had to deal with teenagers of 1955. Okay, that's a little joke, folks. A little joke. I know it's not that great. But Marty thinks that he's able to retrieve the sports almanac after Strickland leaves, and also slides his rolling chair up against Marty's hand, and Marty's in intense pain. Marty opens up the book, looks inside it. No, it's not the sports almanac. What is it, Patriot?
It's a let's see, how do I put this for all you for all you PG family folk? It's a naughty mag.
Ooh la la. Ooh la la. Ooh la la. Ooh la la. Doc.
Yeah. Oh my god. Do you want to know that the funny thing is that there are people that so for those of you who maybe not have heard about this, it wasn't even a year ago. I want to say it was like 6-9 months ago. When Back to the Future was released on Netflix, they actually removed that bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I forget the exact reasoning, the exact answer, but basically it was because it was like sexually suggestive material and stuff like that. Like, they purposefully edited certain parts out of Back to the Future and then came up with their reasonings as to why they did it and everything. In my opinion, I don't care who you are. There's no reason ever good enough to justify doing that crap. I don't care who you are.
But when Netflix did that, there was a lot of backlash about it. It's like, you're ruining the movie. You're ruining one of the key parts of the movie where Marty's thinking he has a sports almanac. He and Doc can set things right. No. This is a moment where Marty realizes all he got was the dust cover on another book.
Yeah.
And, Marty gets on the walkie with Doc again. How these walkies could have the range that they have in this movie, well, in reality, they don't. But Marty gets on the walkie with Doc and says, Doc, I don't have the book. Biff must still have it. Well, where is he? I don't know. And then, of course, it's the moment where in the first film, Biff is at the car and he's getting ready to try to make love to Lorraine against her will.
Mm-hmm.
And, George shows up like he did in the first one. Granted, it's not Crispin Glover that you see because Crispin Glover was having contract issues with Universal. But anyways, it's that moment in the film when George knocks out Biff after Doc asks, where do you think Biff might be? And Marty realizes what moment it is. He says, I got one chance to watch my old man deck out Biff. So,
yeah.
What?
Why would you?
Yeah. So what did you think of that particular scene? How they're, taking the current movie and they're meeting up exactly with that moment from the first movie?
I mean, I personally liked it because that was one thing about that movie is that in the second one is it did have moments where it lines up well.
Mm-hmm.
They line it up perfectly. So because remember, the point in 2 is that Marty is having to avoid his future self. And now he's getting to see events that he never got to see before because he was in the trunk. He was here. He was there. He never got to see certain things. So now he is getting to see them for the first time, and how they overlaid that, I give them props for. They didn't do it perfectly through the movie, but in this specific area, in this one specific moment, I thought they did it really well, personally.
Yeah, they did. And then, Marty thinks he's in the clear, and of course he goes up to the knockout Biff, takes the almanac, although, one of the spectators thinks that Marty took his wallet. And
that was funny, yeah.
Yeah. Did you just take that guy's wallet? I think he just took his wallet. But of course, I know I skipped over the part where Biff's laying there on the ground like this, comes to you, and Marty, bam, knocks him out again. So,
just decks him out, and he's like.
So, anyways, Marty, thinks he's in the clear. Doc's on his way in the DeLorean to land on the roof. Biff's goons spot Marty. Marty tries to evade him. He goes into the gymnasium, goes underneath the table, and Biff's goons are, looking for Marty, and then they see Marty on stage, although it's the Marty from the first film. But one of the funny lines from a couple of those guys was, well, how did he get on stage so fast? How did he change his clothes so fast?
Yeah. Because you're kind of like, isn't that the $1 million question?
Mm-hmm. So, also one of the moments too is before we get to Doc landing on the roof, is Doc actually talking to his younger self and actually helping him, put up the line for when the lightning strikes the clock tower.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, Marty's able to help his other self by getting onto stage, climbing up a ladder, climbing up on the light fixture, and pulling one of the ropes with the sandbags on him, and knocking out Biff's goons. And just when Marty thinks he's in the clear and he's actually watching his other self after seeing Johnny Be Good talk to his parents, Biff shows up and goes, you. And then what happens, Patriot?
He knocks him out, doesn't he? Or it's been a little bit since I've seen 2. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm trying to replay this in my head.
All right, I'll help you out here.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it suck to knock yourself out and not even know it?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, because he isn't that when Biff finds him with the almanac?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then this is where Biff actually like speeds away,
Yep.
and you see Doc like up on top of the gymnasium, like because remember when he takes off, he catches the streamer kind of like banner thing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's dragging. So remember he's like kind of like taking it off the DeLorean and kind of like rolling it up like if it were like a rope.
Yep. And before we get too far ahead, where folks in the chat and folks watching this later think we're skipping entirely over that point, that's actually the second time we see a malfunction with the time circuits. The first was in 2015. No, in 1985 when they're going back to 1955. And then the next time is when Doc takes off from the Lions Estate development area and knocks into the sign and takes those flags, the streamers, and that's the other time. And Doc doesn't realize that it set him to his next destination, which will come into play later. So Marty and Doc, take off in the DeLorean, and when they find Biff, Marty's suggestion is to land on Biff and cripple his car. And Doc says, he's in a 47 Ford, we're in a DeLorean, he'll rip through us like we're tinfoil. Because you got to take into account of how cars were made back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and even the 70s compared to how cars were made in the 80s. A lot of fiberglass is used for cars now. Back then, it was a lot of metal, so those cars could take a licking. So, Marty asked Doc, what are we going to do? And Doc, of course, has a plan. He lowers the DeLorean, starts cruising behind Biff's vehicle, and Marty has the hoverboard that he brought with him from the future. Marty gets on the hoverboard, is able to, go from the DeLorean onto Biff's car, and he tries to avoid Biff as much as he can. He is able to retrieve the almanac, but not before Biff is able to see him in his rearview mirror and get him a few times. And then, of course, they get into the River Road Tunnel, and there's a spin out. Marty's trying to outrace Biff on the hoverboard, and Biff is speeding up. He's going into first gear, second gear, third gear, hitting the gas, and you hear the car's engine just revving up higher and higher and higher. And it looks like Marty's not going to make it. And in the book, actually, it talks about how Doc had already seen an alternate version of that timeline where Marty actually dies because of that chase. So that's why Doc is able to use the streamers and pull up Marty, because he knows the exact point that he needs to be at in order to get Marty out of harm's way.
Right.
And Green Lantern says, and he was just wondering, has anyone heard of an old 80s game called Space Quest? I just found it and haven't played it since I was a kid. Yes, I do remember Space Quest. Do it, brother, do it.
I've never heard of it.
I'll have to.
Never heard of it.
I'll have to show you a video of it after the stream. Yes. But anyways, Doc and Marty get back to the Lion Estates development, of course. The storm's coming through, the same storm that produces the lightning that sends Marty back to 1985. And what's the plan? To burn the book. So Marty takes the newspaper article that says George McFly murdered, and he's holding on to that. There's a bucket on the ground that Marty turns over, puts some kindling inside the bucket, takes a match from the matchbook that he took from Biff in the alternate 1985, places the almanac in there after Doc tells Marty to burn the almanac, and lights the almanac on fire. We see that history, as far as Marty and Doc are concerned, is being restored. Instead of George McFly murdered, George McFly is honored. Same goes for Doc. Instead of Doc being committed to an insane asylum, Doc is commended. And, you know, as Doc and Marty are talking and the wind's making it for miserable flying weather, Doc almost gets struck by lightning. It just misses the DeLorean, hits a tree across the street, and Marty gets on the walkie and says, Doc, you okay? Yeah, I'm okay, but the storm makes for miserable flying weather. So as Doc's trying to, come around from the south to make his descent and land the DeLorean, Marty's saying, be careful. You don't want to get struck by lightning. Marty, you should have kept your mouth shut.
Seriously, I mean, yeah. I actually, with this scene, when you see the lightning, when you see the DeLorean get struck as a kid, and remember, I'm a kid, so anyone listening, watching me this, don't judge me, all right? Otherwise, we'll go to fisticuffs. But as a kid, I actually cried the first few times I watched this, because remember, I didn't see number 2 that often. Even in high school, I didn't see it often because it just wasn't on TV as much as 1 and 3 were.
Mm-hmm.
I would bawl my eyes out because I'm like, Doc's dead. Like, it was the same experience Marty had.
Yeah.
I would bawl my eyes out.
Because remember, that shockwave, the blast from the DeLorean going back in time, it knocked Marty on his butt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. So, yeah, that. Whew, I can still remember the emotions as if it was yesterday. I can still remember it for how I felt.
Same here. And I can remember watching it, going, "What? How's Marty gonna get back? What happened to Doc? Is Doc dead? Did they kill Doc?"
Yep.
So, the streamers come down from the sky. Of course, they're burnt at the end that they were attached to the DeLorean. And, it starts to rain and Marty's going, no. Oh, please, God, no. And then Western Union guy shows up. And the Western Union guy is also the same guy who's in Happy Gilmore. He's the guy that tries to run over Happy in the VW Beetle.
Oh, that's right. That is how have I never picked up on that?
But anyways, he's got something from Marty. I'll just use the book. I've got some for you. A letter after Marty confirms that he is who the guy's asking about. Are you Martin McFly? We were told to deliver this letter to a young man matching your description, answering to the name of Marty. A letter for me? That's impossible. So,
yeah. We had this bet going on for close to 80 years. Looks like I lost.
Yep. So Marty signs for the letter. He starts reading the letter, and then he notices the date at the end of the letter. September 1st, 1885. The Doc's alive, but he's in the Old West. Kid, you need any help? There's only one man who can help me. And then, of course, in part 2, they just use the same footage from part 1 instead of refilming that whole scene. The Marty of part 1 goes into the future after the lightning strikes the clock tower. And as Doc is celebrating, here comes the Marty we've been following in part 2, and he's going, Doc, 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 Doc. Ah! Relax, Doc, it's me, it's Marty. No, it can't be you. I just sent you back to the future. Oh, I know you did send me back to the future, but I'm back. I'm back from the future. And that's where 1955 Doc passes out. But what does he say before he passes out? Great Scott.
Yeah. Yep.
And what do we see? Marty's performing CPR, and then the words show up on the screen, to be concluded. And this was the first, and I don't think I've ever seen it since in a movie, where you actually see the trailer, the coming attraction for the next movie, because Back to the Future Part 3 was released in summer of 1990. I believe it was in July that year, if my old memory serves me correctly.
I think, yeah.
I'm going to look it up real quick. Let's see. Bear with me 1 second. But yeah, that leads us to Back to the Future Part 3. Now, do you want to talk about Part 3 tonight, or do you want to talk about that another night?
Well, let's see. I mean, part of me wants to say yes. Let's talk about it. But part of me's like, we've already tempted fate enough with the technical issues. Like, I mean, like, we could try and go for it. I just don't want, do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. You don't want this stream to be cut short because of more technical issues.
Right, yeah. Like, if we're going to talk about 3, I want to talk about it and not have to, and not fight more bull crap with technology,
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my opinion. I say that we stop it here and then do 3 another time, just so that way we're not tempting fate.
That works. Part 3 of the Back to the Future trilogy discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good to me. Now, you did tell me that you're going to be going on a trip here shortly.
Tentatively, yes, but that's not till next week when I'm supposed to be leaving to go to Florida for Christmas.
Okay.
Tentatively, obviously, but yeah. So, but this coming week, I'm okay.
Okay. So, Wednesday sound good to you?
Wednesday is yeah. I have nothing that would indicate Wednesday's bad. So okay. Yeah, Wednesday's good.
All right. And what time is good for you?
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of like doing this a little bit earlier than normal.
Okay.
Because we're not going as late. So because I know sometimes we'll go for like hours and hours and hours, and you'll be like, I'm exhausted and everything. So
well, we've had some where the two of us are exhausted. We're just losing steam, and
yeah, because we're going for so long, and then it's getting really late and everything. So it's we'll go for an earlier time. I mean, obviously not as early as today, because today is a Sunday, but
yeah,
an earlier time. I think we could probably do.
Are you okay with 7 o'clock on Wednesday instead of the usual 9 o'clock? This way we can get through part 3 and we're not, going too late.
Yeah. Because we'll probably go for probably 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. I probably for 3. So yeah. So 7 o'clock your time.
Yeah. 7 o'clock my time.
Okay. All right. Yep. I see no issues as of right now. Why that shouldn't work? I don't see any issues.
And that'll give me enough time to properly have this set up ready. So when we're talking about part 3, I can actually have something in place of the Pop Talk logo that everybody's seeing on the screen right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But to have an answer to the question as far as the release date for part 3, it actually came out on May 25th, 1990. So I said July, it was actually May. So come Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern, we will be talking about Back to the Future Part 3, and we'll be giving our overall thoughts on the entire trilogy as well, because I think that's just a given right there. See what you guys are saying. Thumbs up to Green Lantern from Alan Copeland. Yes, definitely a great scene. Great Scott. Yes. Yeah, I know people who prefer 1 and 3 over 2. I'm that same way. I know when I went and saw it with my mom and my sister, my mom liked it because it was a Western, and she's the one that got me into Westerns. Yeah, and Alan even thought we should do it another night. Exactly. But I want to thank everybody who showed up during the stream. I know I probably got more than a little testy because of the technical issues. That's just the Klingon side of me. Some mornings I wake up and I identify as a Klingon. I can't help it. I'm ready to sharpen my batleth and go to battle with anyone and everyone. So, fingers crossed, Wednesdays, much smoother. Now, again, I'll be doing it this way and not Streamlabs, so if I do have any guests, I will make room for any other guests besides Patriot and myself. But I appreciate everybody watching this and watching the first part. Patriot, thank you for hanging in there with these technical issues. With all the gremlins.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I can, I'm here for it all, I mean, I've had it on my streams in the past, you've had it on yours, so, it's all good.
It's all part of streaming. What it all boils down to, it's all part of streaming, it's all part of doing this. And sometimes you at least I know I do, I let people know exactly how I feel about it. That's why I went damn stream yards earlier. But anyways, until next time, folks, this has been Mike and
Smoking Patriot here.
Thank you all very much. Have yourselves a great night, and I shall see you all Wednesday, unless you would like to tune in to the Star Wars Guys channel on Tuesday night at 9 o'clock, and we'll be talking about Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, one of my favorites.